fans of boxing and what they talk about and what they desire, it's a knockout. And this man's highlights and his knockouts just still play to this day. When it comes to Gene Tunney, you could definitely give him a lot of credit. You know what I'm saying? He did have an undefeated streak. But at the same time, we also have to it also has to be known that he didn't fight a lot of black fighters. And he didn't give a lot of black fighters opportunities for the heavyweight or the light heavyweight championship of the world. So how can we say he approached the sport really that great when himself didn't really how do I say, he didn't really get up in that water and that smoke with guys like Dick Gregory or Harry Greb, you know what I'm saying, or Sam Langford, and that was by design. Whereas Joe Louis was somebody, when you talk about how he approached the sport, he didn't duck no smoke, whether it was young, old, anybody. He fought Ezra Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott. He fought Rocky Marciano when Rocky was in his prime. Okay, and when he was in his prime, he was knocking all these dudes over. So, to the question, who approached the sport better? I would just have to give the nod to Joe Louis in that category. That's the end of my round.
All right, all right, all right, BVO, it's on you. The time starts when you start talking.
When we say strategic approach, man, we got to really give it to Gene Tunney. He wasn't just a fighter. The man was a man's man. Three-time fighter of the year in the 20s. Um, and he was just an absolute scientist. What you call the sweet science of boxing. He wasn't just a ballroom brawler like a Joe Louis. He was technical, good defensive skill. And to be honest with you, the whole slick boxing revolution, you could say, started with him and Jack Johnson. This guy made a living neutralizing dangerous opponents. And don't forget, he fought one of the greatest fighters to ever live, Jack Dempsey. And he was one of the most feared heavyweights of all time. Tunney's footwork, ability to control distance with his jab, his discipline to stick to a game plan, which we get a lot of fighters who forget to stick to the game plan. You give Gene Tunney a game plan, and he was going to execute it all the way through. And he was the epitome of the sweet science. And now let's compare that to Joe Louis, who was devastating as he's a good puncher. But to be honest, we seen Max Melling expose him. That every time he threw the jab, he dropped his hand. So the one thing about a guy like Joe Louis, he was a great fighter, but Gene Tunney was a master. Even the great Muhammad Ali said it best. They called Joe Louis, the mummy. He was super slow. You knew it was coming. He had the big right hand. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to take anything away from that. But Gene Tunney was just an absolute scientist, similar to a Floyd Mayweather, Pernell Whitaker. Those smaller guys, they probably got a lot of what you've seen them become came from people like Gene Tunney, because Gene Tunney was a fighter's fighter. I mean, he didn't go in there with great power. He wasn't the biggest guy, but he went in there and beat people to death with his mind. And the cool thing about it is when you talk about a fighter in the doggone 20s, some of the stuff he was doing had never been seen before. We had never really seen guys boxing, especially at the heavyweight division. Back in the 20s when he was fighting, it was more of a brawler type of thing. But he kind of showed you that we can make this sport an art form, and he definitely did that. I would almost compare him to an artist, a great artist like a Picasso, because the way he would, execute the plan and just beat the life out of guys. I mean, you really can't say much more about Gene Tunney. I mean, the footwork, the hand speed, the jab. I mean, the ring IQ, ring generalship. It just, I'll tell you what, there is nobody that you can even say in his time that could even compare to him. And he fought everybody he could. And he had a really long undefeated streak. And that's the ending of my first round.
All right, all right. Marky Dan, your rebuttal round. The time will start when you start talking.
Well, the only thing I really have to rebut was literally the point he made at the end. He did not fight everybody, and he did not fight everybody he could have. He ducked basically every black fighter he could have because he fought no. There's no black fighters on his resume. So that point that he made it, that point that BVO made at the end, that he fought everybody that he could have, that's just simply not true. But that's really all I have to rebut. Outside of that, I could say that BVO's breakdown of his skills While that's true, again, who was it against? We could say, okay, it was against Harry Greb and Tom Heaney. Those were good white fighters of that time, but how could we really grade or rate them when you're not fighting everybody, particularly the guys who were considered the best of the best? So that's just my rebuttal. Go ahead.
Um, Marky Dan makes it. Can we go or
No,
we
go
gonna
ahead.
wait?
Wait. You good?
Okay. Um, Marky Dan makes a good point. You can only you can I guess if you want to be a stickler and try to hold the time against him, he couldn't do nothing. It was a segregated time. He couldn't fight the blacks. It is what it is. But if we being honest, we seen a guy who was half the man he was in Jersey Joe give Joe Lewis all types of trouble. So anybody who could move a little bit gave Jersey Joe a lot of trouble. And let's keep in mind, you talk about how Joe Lewis fought a prime Rocky Marciano. He fought Rocky Marciano for a paycheck. He went in there and got beat out the ring. We all seen the famous clip on Coming to America where he said, "Hey, Joe Lewis was 175 years old when he fought Rocky Marciano." But just to be honest, Gene Tunney was too smart, too well conditioned, too disciplined to let anyone like Joe Lewis do anything with him. His approach defined pretty much what you see as the modern day heavyweight. So when you see a big Riddick Bowe, or you seen a Muhammad Ali, or you seen any of the great modern heavyweights, George Foreman, they all come from Gene Tunney because Gene Tunney was the first guy to bring real skill to the heavyweight division. And again, like I said, this man was fighter of the year 3 times in the 20s. When Marky knows, just like I do, that was probably one of the toughest times in boxing. Yeah, he didn't fight the guys from Black Murderers Row, but it wasn't his fault. He could only fight who's in front of him. And I'm done.
All right, that's the end of the first round. I'm gonna turn it back over to Crush the Legend.
Hey. A great first rounds by both debaters, Marky Dan and my man BVO. Great breakdown by both guys. I don't know how you guys feel in the chat, but what we're gonna do now, we're gonna let them take a breather and we're gonna give the scores for the first round. So first we're gonna go to my man, prize fighter. It
I'm
gets
not.
no
I'm not.
brighter.
I'm not quite. I'm not quite ready yet. I'm in the middle of something. So, give me one. Let me go like
Got you.
second or third.
All right,
I'll go ahead and go. I'll go first. I'll go ahead and give my judgment first.
go ahead, Frank.
Um,
I'll go after you.
um, Prize Fighter had a good first round. He left a lot on the bone. He left a
Marky
lot
Dan
of
and
meat
You
on the
mean
BBO.
Marky
bone.
Dan?
I'm
You
sorry,
mean
Marky
Marky
Dan.
Dan?
I said Prize. My fault, Marky Dan. He left a lot of meat on the bone. You only went a minute and 30 seconds. You had 5 minutes. There was so much that you could elaborate on, but you did hit some strong points when you high class that Joe Lewis was a guy that everybody looks to nowadays, and they talk about Joe Lewis. There's not a lot of people that talk about Gene, and you hit on some strong points, but it was so short that it could have been a lot more. And BVO, he elaborated on it, explained his argument a little bit more, and then when we went to the rebuttal round, once again, Marky Dan, you were short on the rebuttal round. Um, and so you didn't use your time wisely. So with that round, I have to give it to BBO because he gave us more to feed on. You gave us an appetizer, BBO gave us an entree. So I had to lean towards BBO.
All right. So D Free gave the first round to BVO. I will go second to give my brother prize fighter a little more
Yeah,
time.
I'm
I
ready
would
to go.
have to go. You ready to go now, prize? Go ahead,
Nah,
you
go ahead.
got it.
I'll go. I'll go last. Go ahead. You got it. But I'm ready.
Cool. So with that being said, D Free scored it for BVO. I would have to say I give this first round to BVO also. He elaborated more on his argument. He used his time wisely. He used more of his time. He was more detailed. He gave a little more specifics about what was going on with Tunney. to with Marky Dan, he was going for one hit quitters and things like that, and he could have put more out there to make it a more compatible round. So I would have to get that first round to BVO, and I will
Mm,
pass it over to prize fighter debaters. While we calling out the scores, please mute your microphones. Thank you.
yes. Um,
Prize fighters on you.
Great round. Yeah, yeah. Great round for both the brothers. Marky, I agree with the other two judges. You didn't give me like, come on, you in a battle rap. Like you watch battle rap. You gotta come with them bars. But I got Marky with the rebuttals because he said he didn't fight nobody. That's good. That's a good point. He didn't fight no black fighters. I like that point. BVO was cooking. I mean, BVO just kept dropping jewel after jewel after jewel. It was like the Beanie Siegel Jada Kiss. I don't want to stop. So I definitely also go with BVO on that round. But Marky did. I think Marky kind of flamed the rebuttal round. That was fire the way he did that. But I got to go with BVO. He just dropped more gems for me, and that's my
Okay,
time.
so all right, so that is our first round, and we have in the building late but always great Tommy Hill, always having us on chill. How you doing, Tommy Hill? So, the first round just went by. So, Tommy Hill, we will bring you in on the second round. We tally up the score, and the first round goes to BVO unanimously. All three judges scored it for BVO. So now, before we go into the second question, Tommy, you are here. So you may play third judge while I do everything else. Will hosting and moderating the situation. They had 5 minutes for their round and they had 3 minutes for the rebuttal round. So I'm going to pass the mic back over to D Free. Everybody in the chat, smash the like button and all that other good stuff. But we got to pay attention to what's going on with the two men going head to head. So D Free, not going to hold you up. Second question, please. We at round two.
All right. Now the second question is going to go start off with BVO for this round. Joe Louis became a global icon and broke barriers during the racial charges era. Does the cultural impact give him an edge over Gene, or should the debaters focus solely on in-ring achievement? I give the floor to you, BVO. It starts when you start talking.
Um, just to be honest, let's not kid ourselves. Joe Louis was a cultural icon, one of the first black superstars that we seen be accepted by the white masses. I mean, as well as him and Sugar Ray Robinson. So I mean, it just goes on and on about how much he was celebrated. But to be honest, man, it was all about race. He broke barriers, which divided America. And to be honest with you, man, his victories unified the nation a little bit behind the athlete. So this was the first time where you seen kind of blacks and whites celebrating. Because this is back in the 30s. And the one thing I will say is Tunney brought something else to the sport. He really brought a lot of respectability to the sport. He wasn't just some low class guy from the South. He was a guy, he was a man's man, handsome guy for his time. And to be honest with you, at the time he was boxing, it was brewed as really brutal. They said boxing was brutal back then, almost like a low brow type of thing where only dummies would box. That's kind of how they felt until the great Gene Tunney came. Gene Tunney would be something like a Conor McGregor, like a Muhammad Ali, that young handsome guy who came to save boxing. Especially, the whole country was going through something called the Rolling 20s, and he just was a great part of that as far as being a star. You could put him anywhere. His professionalism, his lifestyle was clean. It inspired a lot of kids and a lot of fighters because Gene Tunney was one of the first fighters to live what we call a boxing lifestyle. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke. I'm not sure about him with the women or anything like that. I don't want to bring that into it, but he definitely paved the way for what we call the modern boxing. To be honest, without Tunney, there wouldn't be a platform for Joe Louis to get on because Gene Tunney really brought a lot of respectability to boxing. So we can focus on what Joe Louis did as an icon, but that's only because he was black. Gene Tunney had to get it out the mud. Gene Tunney had to fight the tough fights. I mean, he fought a lot of guys nobody wanted to fight. I mean, and just to be honest with you, when you think about the mastery he bought, and this is without modern training, modern equipment. This is one of the first guys that you've seen show you the modern style. One of the guys working off a jab, coming behind the jab with the bigger right hand. So these are all technical things that we take for granted now. But Gene Tunney was inventing these things as we go. So when we talk about Gene Tunney, we got to put a lot of respect on his name because one of the first guys that Muhammad Ali brings up is Gene Tunney. And he talks about how Gene Tunney was such a slick fighter to be a big heavyweight. But I will say this, Joe Louis was a great fighter. But when it comes to Gene Tunney was a once in a generational talent. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, Prize. I'm sorry, Marky Dan is on you. Marky Dan, you there?
My bad. Can you repeat the question one more time, D Free?
Um, the question is, let me get to the question again. The question is, Joe Louis became a global icon and broke barriers during the racial eras. Does the cultural impact give him an advantage over Gene, or should we debate solely focus on the in-ring activity?
I feel that either really gives him a